discuss MDPs and value and policy iteration today, which we've been kind of dancing around last couple of classes. So there is homework for this part of the course, which is consolidation processes. It will be sort of due a week after I would have completed. I guess this one is asking mostly for policy iteration and value iteration. So it will be due a week after I completed policy and value iteration. So it may be a little, you might have a little more time than 990. But you know, I basically today would be the first day. I mean, if you waiting until something gets covered in the class before doing homework, which is probably a reasonable assumption. We obviously haven't actually done value or policy iteration, but I was just trying to get the homework out because if I wait until the topics are covered and then send the homework, then I have to give you more time after that, and we'll never have enough time. Okay, so it's out there, and you should start at least be able to, for example, do part 1 right after today for sure, and maybe several of the other questions to right after today. Okay. Remember that today is Wednesday, and so all the way until next Monday you have time, essentially. So you may have to do that. That's the only way you can make sure that you understand. Okay. Okay. Yes, sir.
What's your policy on discussing homework questions on the discussion board?
Discussion board, anything can be discussed. Okay, as long as, I mean, and you know, I think in general it's fine with me if you discuss even outside of the discussion board. For the homeworks, my requirement would be that you can discuss, but you do your own work. Okay, you can sit around, discuss, and then go back and do your own solutions. Okay, so you don't take any notes while you're discussing and then just copy it over. That's the thing. Okay. You can learn a lot by basically discussing. I'm not going to stop that, and especially it's a graduate class, and I assume you already know the drill in terms of academic honesty and plagiarism and all that stuff. I'm told that actually you've been forced to sign things this year, right? So you know even more than you do normally. Okay. And please ask me if you have questions, such questions like that. It's better that you ask than sort of get into trouble and then figure out the trouble. Okay. And I'm not too worried about rampant copying in this course because I think the topics we cover are advanced enough that there aren't any answers that can be trawled on the web all that easily. Maybe I'm wrong. I mean, you could potentially spend 1 week trawling for the answers, but you could use that 1 week actually doing the problem yourself, and that might be better. Okay. Although, in principle, actually, I'm on record saying you're not allowed to trawl for answers. So, although I can't prove it that we did or not. Okay, so we were talking about MDPs, right, last time, and basically we were talking about the fact that it's a nice model and that you can just by changing the rewards, you can get very different kinds of behavior for the optimal policy. Okay, so much of what we'll be doing today is, somehow I showed the MDP. Which is basically this particular case. This is the environment. These are the states and these are the actions. And I said that the optimal policy is sort of like this for this, and you don't know whether you couldn't quite check. I mean, there's nothing particularly obviously wrong about this policy. Okay, it does look reasonable, but how do I tell for sure that it's optimal? That's what we'll figure out, how to compute the optimal policies. And then I also said if you change the rewards, then you get very different optimal policies. And there was some interesting discussion on the board. For example, apparently somebody thought that I may have said, unfortunately since I'm recording everything, I can't actually say I didn't say it because you can come back and show me that I said it. But somebody thought that it's been that, I may have said in last class that in this particular case, the agent is trying not to end the life. That's the important thing. I can't say that just because the agent is trying not to end his or her life, it doesn't necessarily mean that they would be successful. That depends on the dynamics of the environment. Okay, in this particular case, it turns out that the agent will be successful. Why? As I was mentioning in the response to the question, by going this way and this way, right, and this way, whenever, these are the only neighboring states for the sink states, right? And to avoid dying, the agent should not get into the sink states. Okay, by ensuring that they're doing this action, this action, this action, and remembering that the actions are such that if you try to go in a particular direction, in this domain, it just so happened that if you try to go in this direction, you will go in that direction with 0.8 probability, 0.1 here, 0.1 here. Which essentially means there is zero probability that this agent will ever get into the sink state, given the actions that this agent has chosen. Okay, now had the action been slightly different, that 0.7 probability you go in the intended direction, and 0.1 probability you go in all the other three directions. Then you try your best, but you still might die. Okay, so the choice that the agent has, the only thing the agent can do in MDPs is the action that it takes. That's it. That's its choice. Everything else is determined by somebody else. Okay, so who determines the dynamics? The nature or the rules of the game perhaps determine the dynamics. Okay, who determines the reward? Your boss determines the reward. And once again, so reward and the dynamics are essentially given to the agent, and the agent has to live within those confines and find the optimal policy. Okay, how many of you have heard of Markov chains? Okay, so what's the difference between Markov chains and Markov decision processes?
The actions are already decided, means like they are not, he cannot decide what actions he needs to take.
So if this guy is actually doing these actions, this policy, right? If this agent is executing this policy, and I'm just standing outside and seeing where the agent is going. So for a while the agent is here, then the agent is here, then the agent is here, then the agent is here, and so on. So I'm just seeing the sequence of states. So for me, I'm just an observer. And for me, what I'm seeing is a Markov chain. Okay? Whereas this guy is not an observer. This guy is not just a spectator. He or she can change. Because they have choice, they can decide what actions to do, and so they can actually change the state sequences that they let me observe. Okay, so MDP basically is putting choice into MC, which is Markov chain. Okay, and just a minute. And so those of you who have heard about Markov chain, some of you probably, a subset of you must have heard of hidden Markov models, HMMs. Okay, and HMMs would be what you will observe if the agent is actually solving the POMD. Yeah.
So formally, is a Markov chain a sequence of actions or a sequence of states?
It's a sequence of states. You only see the sequence of states, the behavior. Okay. Basically when I'm outside, I'm looking at this, I'm only getting to see the behavior. And by definition, behavior is the sequence of states. So I mean, behavior in psychology means all sorts of things, but for us, a behavior means a sequence of states. Okay? And by changing the policy, I'm changing the behaviors that are exhibited. Okay? There was some question. Yes?
So can we say that finding an optimal policy in MDP is like converting MDP to Markovian chains?
No. Think about that, but no, I won't get into it right now, but no, not directly. Other questions? Okay, so this is the definition slide that I tried to start the course with. I'm going to start it today again, second try. So basically, I'll just go through the definitions, and then I'm assuming that you are reading when I asked you to start reading. You're reading the chapters. So you have basically the states. You can see that, right? Yeah, and the actions, and the reward function, and the T is the transition function. That's the model. When they say model, that means the transition function. Okay, so it tells you if you do an action in a state, what are the states you can get into with what probabilities. Okay, so that's all being defined. So the set of states, it's a finite set of states, and the number of states is n, and there's a finite set of actions. You assume there are n different actions, and the transition function TSAS dash is a probability that if you do action A in state S, you will get to state S dash. Okay, now the word Markov comes because of that. Markov essentially means it's only dependent on the current state. Okay, it does not depend on how you got to that state. Okay, so the probability that you'll get to S dash when you did action A in state S doesn't quite depend on how you got to S. So in particular, those of you who remember the great independence assumptions that you make in Bayes networks, for example. So what we are basically saying in this case is probability of getting into S dash given that you did an action A in state S, and you started with some S0, S1, then S2, blah, 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 S, N, and action A. That means these are all the states the agent went through to get to Sn, and then did the action A in it. That probability is the same as That's it. That's the independence assumption. A Markov assumption allows you to make this huge conditional independence assumption. So the way you got to the state doesn't matter. We don't care how you got into ASU. Okay? It doesn't matter if you came by hook or crook or whatever. But if you do an action in ASU, then the outcomes would depend only on the action and the fact that you're an ASU. That's obvious. Okay? And so the transition function is Markovian because of this. Okay? And then there is a reward function. Okay, so notice, by the way, we will be discussing right now in the context in terms of atomic states. Okay? So atomic state means we basically just have this probability as a number. Okay? What we will do when we start going from atomic representations for MDPs to propositional or factored representations is the states themselves will be represented in terms of state variables, and this probability distribution would be represented potentially, for example, as a dynamic Bayes network. That's like jumping way ahead. Okay, so that's where the Bayes network stuff that you may have learned in the introduction to AI will come in. Right now, remember that all the graphical representations, probabilistic graphical representations you learned were compact ways of representing specific probability distributions. Right now, I'm just writing it in extensional form. For any given pair of states and an action, I'll give you the number. So that's how I wrote the distribution. There may be a more compact way of representing it. And that we will talk about, that's when we'll use dynamic Bayes network representations. Okay, so for now, just think of that in terms of those probabilities. And then there is this other thing we have, which is the reward function. The reward function is the immediate reward you get for just being in state S. It's a door prize, right? Okay, as soon as you enter, you get the door prize. Everybody gets the door prize. Okay, unlike the real door prizes, apparently only some people get. And then you collect all these door prizes. Your life is collecting door prizes, essentially. Okay, and then so it's a bounded real valued reward function. That's the only definition. That's the only restriction we have. So bounded means the reward cannot be infinite. It has to be finite, which means there is some R max, which is the largest reward that you can potentially get in any state in this MDP, which is useful to know. So we'll actually use the term R max to talk about the maximum reward for any given state in the entire MDP. Okay, so it's bounded from above there. Okay, And so you can get, so anyway, then, so you have immediate reward for getting into the status, and then there are all sorts of, so that's basically the point of reward. And now again, when the way we define reward function, it doesn't matter how you got into this state. It only depends on the state itself. Okay, so the rewards are also Markovian. That means if you get to this state, whichever way you got to this state, you will get a reward. Okay, so that's the general, that's the basic model. And then, so this is actually a nice thing to look at, because that's the graphical model of what's happening in MDPs. Okay, so you are in state ST. Just because you're in state ST, you already got some reward RT. That's the door price. Okay, and then you get to choose the action that you want to do in state ST. And the next state you get ST plus 1 depends both on ST and AT. Okay? And this is actually, if you forget about these nodes, which are basically the reward nodes, this stuff is a Bayes network. Right? And in fact, this Bayes network already captures the Markovian assumption. Right? Because, for example, ST, the probability that ST plus 1 would be a given value, given all its ancestors, depends only on its immediate parents. Right? That's what the Bayes network independence assumptions are. So ST taking a value depends only on, ST plus 1 taking a value depends only on ST, which is its state parent, and AT, which is its action parent. The difference is in Bayes networks, everything has been decided by somebody else, by nature. Here you get to decide these nodes. You get to decide what action you get to take. So you that's the little control you have on your destiny. If you don't have any actions, then you just a spectator. Just watch it. Watch the fun. Okay? But you get to change the actions, and that way you can change what state can happen next. Okay? Any questions? That's basically the model. So you have the transition function, and you have the reward function, and that's it. Okay? Now what's a policy? A policy should tell you, the pictures that you saw till now, the previous one, for example, I just basically put arrows in each of the cells, right? That's telling you what action to do in what state. Okay, that means it looks like the policy tells you what action to do in each state. Okay, and so there are, as I said, there are a number of actions. So you can do A actions in the first state, times A actions in the second state, times A actions in the third state. This is for S number of states, and so you have A power S number of policies. Because this is discrete problem. There are only A power S number of policies. One of them is potentially the optimal one, and you want to pick it. The question, of course, is just because there are exponential number of policies, is it really going to be the case that you must go through all policies and enumerate them and find the best one? The worst case, that may be, if you are unlucky, that may well be the case. But one of the nice things is we'll find out that there's a lot of structure in this problem, and because of which, actually, you will be able to compute the optimal policy in time that's, in this case, the time taken to compute the optimal policy in the worst case, if you don't have any better idea, you would enumerate every policy and check if it's good or not. So it would be exponential in the number of states. So if I were to tell you that it's only polynomial in the number of states, in fact it's only square of the number of states, you should be really happy, because that's much better than the worst thing that can happen. And it turns out that in fact we can find something which does it in that dynamic programming algorithm, which does it in polynomial amount. Yes.
But you can have infinite sequences of actions.
Okay, so here's the interesting point. The behavior, I mean, these, by the way, these questions, if you haven't thought about MDPs before, there are a lot of things that should be surprising to you. And if you thought about it, you should be bored to death by now. Okay, one way or other. So the thing is that the fact that, so if you take, let's say, something like this, I don't know how I magically came here, but if this is the optimal policy the agent is doing, okay, what is the number of states you might see the agent do before it dies? What's the maximum number of states you might see the agent do before it dies?
Infinite.
It could be infinite. Because every arbitrary state sequence has some probability. It turns out that there are sequences that have zero probability. Again, this is the other thing that I want you guys to remember. Just because there is no good idea doesn't mean there are no bad ideas, right? It turns out there are infinite number of state sequences which are infinitely long, and they will still have non-zero probability. There are also state sequences which will have zero probability. So for example, a state sequence which starts by saying 1, 1, 1, 3, zero probability. Because it's not going to happen. Okay? But here is the state sequence, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, 1, infinite number of times.
0.1.
Non-zero probability.
0.1 is good.
All I care is it's non-zero probability.
Of course, none of them is optimal, but
No. So those are behaviors. So all I'm trying to differentiate is the choice you get to do. The choice you have is what action to do in each state. And there are S number of states. And so you pick an action in each of those states. And there are A choices for each state because there are A different actions. So that's why your policies, the number of policies basically means a different configuration of these arrows. There are only finite number of them. There are only A power S number of them. Any given policy, however, can give you infinite sequence of behavior. Okay? In fact, one interesting issue for a MDP, it turns out that the MDP model we are looking at, it's general enough that all sorts of things become special cases. Okay? One particular special case of MDPs that people would talk about are things like proper policies, MDPs with proper policies. An MDP with a proper policy is one where, in essence, asymptotically, every behavior sequence ends in a sync state. Okay? That means you can't live forever and ever. That's just a special case of MDPs, it turns out. Okay? But in general, the point I'm making here is that if the number you're talking about, it's the number of states I get to see. Okay? That's different from the number of policies, which is only finite. And I only get to select between the policies, not the states I get to exhibit. I get to change the states I exhibit by indirectly changing the policy. And I just select one policy and stick to it. That's the idea.
but if you are going to compute the optimal policy, then you have to check all the possible sequences.
No, you only have to check. Again, we're going to go through the way we pick the optimal policy, but essentially, it's only going to have to differentiate between these A power S policies. A reasonable question you can ask is, how do you differentiate between two policies? Both of them will show infinitely long sequences. How do you decide which one is better? That's a good question to ask, and that's what we're going to be talking about right now. Yes?
Jumping from 1-1 to 1-3, I don't think so will come in this, won't be a possible action.
That's what I'm saying. So if I give you a state sequence which shows 1-1 and 1-3 and blah blah blah, the probability that that state sequence will ever be observed
Is zero.
is zero.
So it won't be in A raised to the power S2.
No, that's a state sequence. That's different from, again, this is the number of policies.
See, a policy consists of one policy consists of infinite number of sequences.
No, a policy just consists of what action to do in a state.
Okay.
That's all it consists of. Okay, think about the following thing. I get to decide what actions to do. The nature can decide what those actions will have effects as. So unbeknownst to me, suppose the nature decided, I don't feel like doing this probability nonsense anymore. If you want to go up, I'll just let you go up.
Then yes.
Right? So it's not a question of, so basically you get to choose the actions you get to do. Once you know the actions, you get to pick one of the actions and that's your choice. Yes, sir.
Can you just say it is a sequence of action?
What?
Sequence of actions. The atomic policy is a sequence of actions.
No, optimal policy is not a state sequence of actions. That's a very good point. So in general, if all of you know, for example, the A-star search model. I'll act as if you did intro to AI, and so you know the A-star search model, where you are in a particular start state and you need to reach some goal state. And then what is the solution? Solution is a path that starts from the initial state and takes you to the goal state. So solutions for A-star search are always sequence of actions. Sequence of states, which also means sequence of actions. Solutions for MDP cannot be sequence of actions because essentially you need to, once you do an action here, you don't know where exactly you will be. You might be back here, you might be here, or you might be here. So in general, in a stochastic environment, there is a probability, there is a non-zero probability that you will be in many, many different states. And if you find yourself in that state, you are going to ask, what am I going to do? Now here is the interesting thing. Do you have a policy for going from here to your home? Or do you have a plan for going from here to your home? Do you understand what I'm saying? Because we live these things, right? Do you have a plan to go to your home? Do you have a policy to go to your home?
We have a policy, but plan will be made based on that policy.
No. So most of us act as if we have a plan to go to our home. Okay? So my plan to go to my home is after this, I'll run, I'll go up, act as if I went to my office, come down, start my car, go. That's my plan.
We assume
Okay, now
determinism.
that is assuming determinism. But then I do have an implicit policy. If as soon as I come to one of the parking garage, those things, it gets stuck, then what do? I need to find how do I get out of the parking lot. Then I will say, well, I'm in a bad state. I'm supposed to be able to get through this onto the road. Now I'm stuck here. So then I'll basically replan in my head and say, well, I'll go to this other part. And then if that is also closed, then I'm going to just try. Okay.
That is what I said, that we have policy, but plan will be defined dynamically.
Or the opposite way. In fact, policy, if you have policy, you have a plan. Most of us solve, even though real world is always stochastic, we might just act as if it is deterministic. Okay, so for example, one way you might try to go from here to, let's say, +1 being the good state, is act as if all actions are deterministic and they will have their most likely outcome, which is the 0.81. And then in that case, it becomes an A-star search. Then you find a plan that is just a sequence of actions. And then you start doing those actions. That's what you are saying. Except if you are lucky, they will have their most likely outcome. But once in a while, they'll have less likely outcomes. The trick is, what do you do when you have less likely outcomes? Okay, MDPs basically pre-compute. The policy pre-computes what you are supposed to do if you find yourself in any of these states that you're likely to be able to find. So it's just a lookup. Oh, so I'm in this state where the parking thing is not lifting up. So it says, turn back, go to the other one. Okay, that would be the optimal action there. Okay, now it turns out, as we'll see, what we'll see today and next class probably would be computing these optimal policies. Just because you compute, just because you know how to compute optimal policies, doesn't mean you will actually ever compute the optimal policies. Right? I mean, I try to say this, that, it's like the difference between computer science and, programmers is you'll first understand how to do the optimal thing and then say, to heck with it. Life is too hard, if you want to do the optimal thing. And you basically find, ways of approximating it. But first understand what's the optimal thing to do. Okay? So the optimal solution, the solution for MDP will always be a policy, and the optimal policy is one of those policies. Any other questions? Yes?
I was just going to say that I think that some of the confusion with the infinite state sequences.
Mhm.
It comes from forgetting that the policy is only dependent upon the current state rather than the previous states. If
Yeah.
it was dependent upon the previous states, then we would have a policy
Yes.
that's infinitely long.
That, yeah, in fact,
But
it's,
since
in
you're
fact,
just
when
looking
you,
at one state, right?
yeah, when you get to sort of right, when you get to PALM-DPs, just because you said this, when you get to PALM-DPs, you will see that PALM-DPs actually are MDPs in a slightly different state space. They are MDPs in the space of belief states. A belief state is a probability distribution over states, and there are infinite number of probability distributions. So it's actually MDPs just in a much bigger space, you know. And that happens actually for PALM-DPs because in some sense it's history dependent. The MDP is history dependent. Anyway, if you didn't understand that, that's fine. Okay, so these are all the things that I think we talked about, you know, without saying it. It's called first order Markovian. The Markovian part is because it doesn't care about the other states that it went through to get to this current state. Okay, and then the reward process is also Markovian because it doesn't really care about what other states you visited to get to this state. You just decide on the reward directly based on the state. Now this other part is stationary dynamics and reward. That also is an assumption we are making. We are making the assumption that the probability that you will go up is 0.8 no matter whether you did this in the morning or in the evening or in the night or, you know, on a leap year or a non-leap year. If you are in that state and you try to go up, it will always be 0.8. You will go up. 0.1 you go left, 0.1 you go right. Okay? So that basically means it just depends on the probabilities. The model is actually time insensitive. The absolute time doesn't matter. Yes?
So the reward doesn't depend on the action that is performed to reach that state, right?
Yeah.
But that probability drives probability RT equals to R is given AT and ST. So that should be only given ST, right? AT should not be there. In the diagram.
Yeah, I mean there are models actually. There are simple extensions of MDP models where you take cost of the action into account in deciding the reward you get. That's a slight extension. Okay. So sometimes you want to be able to differentiate not only do the states give you rewards, but actions have costs. Certain actions are costlier than other actions. And so in general, you can actually think of reward as a state action combination, but only the immediate action and immediate state. Okay. Okay, so the stationary part is important. The reward is stationary. You know, you go to that state any time during your life, you'll get the same reward. You go to that state any time during your life and do an action A, you'll get the same probability distribution on the next states. Okay? Fine? So basically it doesn't depend on the absolute. And then the last thing that we assume is full observability. Okay, this is the difference between while I'm thinking, I have no clue what ST plus 1 would be. Okay, if I do action A1 in action, a particular action in a particular state, I only know what are the possible states and their probabilities. I don't know which one will actually occur. But then I will do that action and the state will occur. So the nature chooses one of those states. And then you get to be able to look at that state and say, oh, this is S55. So you know exactly by looking at the state what specific state you are in. That's the full observability. Okay, which is why the policy is linked to the state. It just says, if you are in state S, do action A. And if you don't know which state you are in, then how are you going to figure this? And in general, a more realistic scenario is you don't quite know where you are. The state is partially observable. In that case, this model won't work. Okay, so this is a full observability. Okay. So now the interesting question is that I mentioned that the number of policies is A power S. It looks like if you essentially have S number of states and you can do A different actions in each state, then there are A power S states and A power S policies. The real question is that really the case? Can there be even more policies than A power S? And the particular point is can the policy ever be non-stationary? Notice an interesting thing. I said the dynamics are stationary. I said the reward is stationary. So So why should the policy be non-stationary? I want you to actually say that it's more likely that the policy is non-stationary. Because it turns out actually life is full of these kinds of quotes. This is a quote which I like by Churchill. It says, I don't necessarily agree with it, but I like it because it helps me make this point here. It says, if you're 20 and you're not a liberal, you're heartless. If you're 40 and you're not a conservative, you're mindless. Right? Apparently the optimal choice, optimal action to do in terms of party affiliation depends on how old you are. Okay? And the same thing, none of you, you grad students, either you already made millions and you decided to take grad courses on the side, or you have no money. But if you had money, then you go to your financial advisor and say, how do I invest? Then they will tell you, if you are about to die, put all your money under your pillow. Right? Right? Or actually give it to your kids and be done with it. Okay, whereas if not, then, put it all in this high risk things because, it's high pay, high reward and high risk, but, you might make it big. Okay, so the idea is the optimal policy we assume does depend on how many more years we have to live. Right? What you're supposed to do in a particular state depends on how many more years you have to live. Right? And so, yes?
See, I think that if we talk about this, what is said by Churchill, there are a number of things that we are leaving, we are not taking into consideration. That's why we are telling that rewards are all stationary and everything. So if we talk about agent is never gonna.
No, okay, again, don't actually directly try to go from the boxed one to this. All I'm saying, okay, here is the thing, okay? Here is the thing. Suppose you have 0 time to live. Okay, here. Okay. Suppose you have 0 time to live. That means you have no actions left. You have nothing to do. If you have one action to do and then you die. One action to do and you then die, right? Okay. Which one are you going to do depends on the fact that basically you're going to take reckless, you do this, right? It's like the Hail Mary pass is what people talk about in the games, in the sports, right? You have like 1 second left on the clock. You're going to try crazy things because they have like 0.001 probability that you will make some random, big goal. You won't try that in the beginning of the game, but you will try it at the end of the game because you have no more time left and you only have one action left. You may as well look for the action that has the highest possible reward. If it works. But it might not work actually. Okay, in which case, so if you have more number of time steps left, then what you do would change from if you have fewer number of time steps. What that means essentially is I just said the policies are actually non-stationary. It depends, and they depend on the number of time steps you have left to go. Okay, so if I arbitrarily tell you, the human life is kind of interesting for lots of people because we have a finite lifespan. So for us, the number of years, for example, age is what we will look at, and number of years is approximately, less than 100 for most people, right? So you have a horizon limited MDP. Okay, just a second. So if I tell you that there are T, I think that's what I used here. No, K.
T.
Yeah, T, yeah. So T is the horizon. Unfortunately, I shouldn't have used T again because T is also used for the transition function. But, if the T is the number of time steps to go, then the policy would be if you have 0 time steps to go, you don't do anything. If you have 15 time steps to go, there is a policy. If you have 14 time steps, there is another policy. If you have 13 time steps, there is another policy. Which actually means it's not just a power st, but there are actually s times t number of distinct states. Because the same state occurring when you are in 20 is different from it occurring when you are 65. Okay, so the number of policies a power st. Okay, this is the finite horizon case. In the finite horizon case, there are more policies. And it turns out actually that's the easier case to understand. That's what we'll start with. Okay? Infinite horizon case basically is the other case where you essentially have infinite amount of time left. And the advantage of having infinite amount of time left, which many of you probably saw in Hollywood movies, etc., is basically there are a lot of things that we take for granted don't hold anymore. So after you do one action, you still have infinite number of actions left. I mean, infinite number of actions you get to do. Okay, and in that case, actually, for the infinite number, horizon case, the number of policies is fewer. Why? Because there is no difference between infinity and infinity minus 3. Right? So the optimal policy, optimal action to do in this state shouldn't depend on how much time you have lived. Essentially. Okay? So the infinite horizon case is conceptually simpler. The pictures that I've been showing you are essentially infinite horizon cases. Finite horizon case is much more realistic because we all actually live for a finite number of actions we get to do. Okay, do notice that in the 100 years you get to live, you get to do all sorts of states of the world. In your first year itself, you can be in all sorts of states of the world. In the second year again, you can be in all those states. And in the third year again, you can be in all those states. Okay? The question is, how many actions do you get to do? That depends on how long you get to live. Yes?
So do I understand this correctly that the stationary policy can actually be seen as the non-stationary policy with an infinite horizon? Is that what you just said?
So basically, if you have finite horizon, the optimal policy for a finite horizon case is a non-stationary policy. That's what I want to say. Whereas for infinite horizon case, the optimal policy cannot be, the optimal policy is a stationary policy.
Okay.
Okay? Right? Yeah.
I want to point out that in figure 17.2a, in which we have defined the whole policy, in which we have defined the policy with arrows. Okay, so in that if we take a agent who will live for 8 actions, so still the policy will be equivalent to when he will live for infinite actions.
I don't know. Let's talk about it outside. I don't have the picture you have in there. Okay, so anyway, so for the finite case, we look for these many policies. For the infinite case, you look for a fewer number of policies, and you still want to find the optimal policy among them. So now finally we get to look for comparing policies for the finite case. Okay. This is what your question was. Why not consider a sequence of actions? You understood that. Why not just replan? It turns out there's nothing wrong, but it may not be optimal. Okay, why? If you're going to replan, why plan at all? Okay, the difference between, so the replanning idea, first of all, would just, to understand how inoptimal it can be, you might actually die. Okay, there are many, many things people can do. Again, I said this crazy thing the other day, but another crazy thing I read, some poor teenager was going on a trip with his other students in New York, like over the weekend, and he was in the double-decker bus, and on the top of the double-decker bus, there is a place where you can open, and he opened and he put his head out, and the bus went under a tunnel, he hit his head, died. Imagine of all the crazy things you can do, he just did it because he thought, I'll do this action, and if I live, I'll do another action. He didn't live. If you made a policy, you wouldn't have done this. You see what I'm saying? It's like the real life is full of all sorts of actions. Whoever said putting your head outside the bus might lead you to death? Well, it does, if you think about it. There's just so many actions you can do. This is one of these crazy actions, and I'm not making this up. I specialize apparently in this kind of news these days. But this poor guy died over the weekend. Okay, and that's what happens if you replan. If you live, then you can see another day. Okay, and when your whole idea is I'll try something, and if it doesn't work, I'll try something else. Then you are assuming, at the minimum, that the world is
Got it.
And unbeknownst to this poor teenager, New York is not ergodic. New York has tunnels and double-decker buses just, I mean, I don't know, it's like the people put, whenever you're going through these tunnels, they put 15 feet, and I think, why do they write this? Apparently because to make sure that buses are not bigger than that. And you know, if you're in double-decker bus, there's only like that much space. Okay. Anyway, so that's why not pre-planned. Because it's never going to be optimal. In this case, it's spectacularly inoptimal. But even if you live, you might be inefficient in terms of the rewards you collect. That's the reason. Okay. However, for computational reasons, you might decide to do during planning later. Okay, that's different. Okay. Okay, so I want to now compute, you know, between these policies, I want to pick the best policy. So that means I need to kind of, you know, compare policies. Okay. So how do I do that? In essence, what I would like to do is talk about indirectly the value of a policy in terms of if I keep doing this policy, starting from a particular state S, what is the expected cumulative reward I get? So if I'm in the state S, if you're in ASU, you get a door prize for getting into ASU. That's the immediate reward. Maybe not very high, maybe not very low. There is some immediate reward. But then there is a policy you have in your mind as to what you're going to do in your 2 years at ASU or 5 years or 85 years at ASU. Right? And with respect to that policy, you can ask yourself how good is hanging around in ASU. That would depend on, you know, the cumulative reward that you expect to collect as you go forward. Okay, and so in essence what we would like to do is connect each policy to a value function. Okay, and the value of a state is, you know, for a policy, I mean, so value of a state essentially is defined, value of a state K with respect to a policy phi. A policy is a state action map. Okay, and I would say if I give you, this would be, since it's the cumulative function of the rewards, it's going to be a real number. And I will say one policy is strictly better than another policy if it's actually in every state is either equal to or better in value than what you would get if you use the other policy. And the optimal policy is such that in no state is there any other policy that will give you better reward. Not reward, better value. By the way, I do hope you understand the difference, extremely important difference between reward and value. Reward and value can be completely, not only uncorrelated, but can be inversely correlated. That's why life is interesting. Okay, I mean the reward for hanging around in this class doesn't seem to be very high. Reward for having ice cream seems to be much higher. Okay, but I would like to, you know, go under the sort of delusion that the value for hanging around in this class repeatedly is higher than value for eating ice cream repeatedly. Okay, so the value is the long-term reward you get starting from this state and doing actions. It's the vantage point that this state gives you. Okay, and in some sense actually the immediate rewards for two different states may well be this is less than this, but its value is better. The one with the lower reward might have a higher cumulative value. This is the reason why kids and their parents get into trouble all the time. The kids want to do the ones which have high immediate reward. The parents think that they know what the overall cumulative reward would be starting from that state. And then they say, no, instead of doing this, do this other thing. Yes, sir.
So I got two questions.
Yeah.
One, is it true that, is there always an optimal policy? And could you get into a situation where you have no policy that's always better?
Those are interesting questions. So first of all, the policies, there is an optimal value function under the constraints we have, which is, the reward is bounded and the transition function is bounded. Okay, and with respect to the optimal policy, there may be multiple optimal value function. There may be multiple policies which are all equally good.
But there's at least one.
There are at least one.
And my other question is, wouldn't we only care about the value of the initial state? Because I mean, if one.
Okay, so that's a very interesting question. MDPs don't care. One more thing that MDPs don't care, that A star cares about, is what's your initial state. They don't care. There is no initial state. They just tell you what to do in each state that you find yourself in. So initial state to them is just a small special case. And however, you and I do care about initial state. We start from certain initial states rather than any random states. Do you see what I'm saying? The state where we start from is mostly left to us, whereas the state we end up in depends on the nature. Right? So nobody suddenly finds themselves at the top of Mount Everest. Not any of the people here, I assume, in the class. You say, what should I do next? Okay? And so if you know the initial state that you are going to be starting from, in fact, one of the interesting questions from the point of view of computation is there may be states that you will never reach starting from this initial state, first of all. In which case, wasting your time finding the optimal action to do in that state is useless. Okay, remember the 15 puzzle problem from Intro to AI? The sliding tile puzzle problems. It turns out that the sliding tile puzzles essentially have two parts of their state space that are disconnected. If you are in this space, then you can never go from there to this space. And the way you can go from this space to this space is essentially doing an illegal action, which is removing two tiles, physically swapping them. Then you'll suddenly be in a completely different part of the space you'll never get to. But those are states in the sliding puzzle. They are not reachable. If you are finding the optimal policy, the MDP would say just find the optimal action for every state. And you would have wasted your time. If you know that you're going to start with 1, 2, 3, etc., all the way up to 15 and the blank at the last. Okay, then you would have wasted your time finding what do I do if I find myself in this other part, because you'll never get there for the actions you're doing. So initial state is another one of those things that we'll use to reduce the cost of solving MDPs. The interesting part is MDPs is in some sense the base level MDPs is the hardest thing you'll ever do for a fully observable case. And it's kind of deceivingly simple because I'll say eventually I said it's only polynomial in the number of states. But polynomial in the number of states is no good because most realistic problems are huge in terms of the number of states. Okay, in fact, there is this other point that I should make, which is MDPs actually are also studied quite well, at least one of you know, in OR literature, a lot. And the view that people take in OR literature and the AI literature on MDPs is completely different. In OR literature, you assume that you have a problem and you will carefully model it such that it will have maybe 15 states. For the homeworks, it will be 15 states. If you have a large-scale problem, maybe hundreds of states. In the AI literature, you assume that the states are not for you to decide. You don't get to model. Basically, there's a bunch of state variables, and if you have k state variables, there are 2 power k states. It's just a sheer question of scale. Because a polynomial in 2 power k is actually exponential in k. And if you count the problem size in terms of the number of state variables, it looks like it's a pretty losing game. If you count it in number of states, it looks like it's a winning game. And that's a huge difference. OR people basically, one of my colleagues says, OR people don't play with their food. In the sense, they will ensure that their algorithm is kept, the Cplex or whichever it is, nicely kept in one place, and you ensure that you model the heck out of the problem such that all the irrelevant stuff is removed yourself, okay? So that there's just a few number of states, and then you apply the optimal policy construction. The theory is the same. The theory for finding optimal policy is the same. In fact, the people whose names you will hear today, like Bellman and Howard, they all essentially are either mathematicians or, basically mathematicians. They counted themselves either as OR people or any other people. They didn't necessarily have specific religions, academic religions. But the religions matter in the sense of what other assumptions do you have. Okay, and we assume, in this class we'll assume state spaces can be very large. We'll try to understand how to do it for 8 states kind of a thing. But basically, if all you know is how to do it in 8 states with a computer, you're dead. Because you will be getting 8 million states for normal problems. Okay. Okay, so how good is your policy? We'll define this value function and then you compare the value functions. So we are going to consider the finite horizon case first. In the finite horizon case, it's not even just bk pi, it is bk t pi. Because the value of a state depends on how much time you have left to live. In particular, if t equal to 0, what's the value of a state? Please tell me something.
Immediate reward.
Immediate reward. If t equal to 0, that means you're dead already. You are where you are. Then you collect your door prize and you die. Right? So t equal to 0, value function is the same as reward function. T equal to 1, you do something and then you are in the t equal to 0 case. T equal to 2, you do something, you're in the t equal to 1 case, which actually eventually gets to t equal to 0 case. The reason I'm doing this dance is you will actually compute the value functions. If you are going to live for 10 iterations, 10 horizon, then you need a 10 and a 9 and a 1, an 8, etc. all the way to 0. 0 is known. 1 will be computed in terms of 0. 2 will be computed in terms of 1. 3 will be computed in terms of 2. That's it. That's the dynamic programming, essentially. Okay? The reason for this is Markovian nature. The reward you get in a state doesn't depend on how you got into that state. So if you have only 0 time left and you are in this state, you will get immediate reward, which is your value. That's it. Your value would be just your immediate reward. It doesn't matter how you got into this state. And so if you have 1 time left, then you pick the best action you can do, and then you'll get into a state, and then you collect the reward from there. You're done. Okay? So we're going to look at basically the value function for the finite horizon case, and the value depends on the number of stages to go. 0 stages to go means the game is over. Okay? And so Vk pi s is the k stage to go value function. The k stages left, and you are following the same policy pi. Okay, the pi tells you also with respect to k what is, if you have 3 stages left to go, what is your best action for this state. That's what it's supposed to do. So expected total reward after executing pi. Remember that one of the issues in infinite horizon case is you don't quite know how far are you supposed to simulate the MDP. This is the simulation oriented view. So if you're simulating the MDP, then the k stages to go value function is you start from that state S, do k actions. So do the first action according to the policy. So you know you're in state 15. Policy tells you if you have 10 steps to go and you are in state 15, you must do action A3. So you do A3. Then after you do A3, you look to see which state you are in. You find yourself in state S17. The policy tells you if you have 9 more steps to go and you are in S19, do A55. So you do A55. Like this. And you do it until 0 steps to go. Then you have a sequence of states that you have watched while you're doing this. And you add up all the rewards that you got for those sequence of states. That's the cumulative reward. So for that particular sequence, that is the cumulative reward. Had the actions been deterministic, if you do these actions again, you will still get the same. If you do the policy again, you'll get the same exact cumulative reward. But because it's stochastic, when you start from the state again next time around, the next state might be different. For the same action, the next state might be different. And after that, everything might be different. And so you get a completely different cumulative reward. So the reasonable thing to ask yourself is what's the expected reward? What's the expected reward for this policy? This is what, honesty is the best policy, right? To heck with it. I mean, if you actually try to be honest in a particular case, you may have actually lost. When somebody says honesty is the best policy, they didn't say that for your specific case on Tuesday afternoon, the honesty is the best policy. They just said of all the people who tried to do different policies, being honest wounds up on the expected sense, having higher value, higher cumulative value. That's exactly what is being captured here. Okay, so I'm adding up the rewards that I am getting by following the policy. Remember, I'm comparing two policies, so I actually have two different policies, both of which tell me what action to do in a state and the remaining number of steps to go. Okay, and so for each of them, I can compute this expected value. Just empirically, you can compute this. And then that would be the value function, the value estimate for that state. And you get a value estimate for both the policies, and then you can compare and see if one is definitely better by seeing whether it dominates the other one across the board. And you're looking for the optimal policy, that means the policy which will not be worse than anybody else. Yes?
So is this, step left to go in the book is talking about discount?
No, discount is not yet. We haven't reached discount yet. Okay, so this is a very good point. All I'm talking about finite horizon MDP is not in the book. Yes. Welcome to graduate courses. Right. There are lots of other places where finite horizon case is described, but the book just directly goes to the infinite horizon case. Not because that's a more realistic one, but that's because it's a more conceptually easy one. I will teach you the finite horizon case first, and then teach infinite horizon case as like an extension. Okay, that's a good point. So whatever I'm doing here, and in fact, this makes it, finite horizon case is actually conceptually, it's kind of more scary because now the policy is much bigger. But it's actually easier to understand the value of a state because you only live for t number of steps. So you just need to actually simulate it for t number of steps. So it's very well understood. And furthermore, it turns out, as I said, 0th one depends on the first, V1 depends on V0, V2 depends on V1, and you only want Vk, maybe k equal to 10. So you can actually understand computation of the optimal value function also very easy. Okay? Okay, so finally, something that makes a lot of sense, which is we are going to now use dynamic programming to compute Vk pi s. Okay, and these equations you should understand very quickly, in general, and that's part of understanding MDP. This is the first time if you're seeing, maybe we'll go through it slowly. So basically, V0 pi, that is the value function with 0 stages to go for any policy, is equal to R of s, right? Because it doesn't matter, what plan you have. If you're going to be dead right now, then you don't get to execute your plan, right? So, but this is actually computationally great because you have a base case. V0 is your base case. Okay, now then I will write a nice little recurrence equation which says Vk pi s, that is value of a state with k stages to go, according to policy pi, is going to be, first of all, since you are in state S, I would, without asking questions, I'll give you the door prize. Always, I'll give you the door prize for getting into the state S. R of S plus this thing. That's, you want to understand it clearly. Okay? All this is saying is, when you are in, after you got the reward, then you are in state S, you ask your policy pi, what am I supposed to do in state S if I have k stages left to go? And it will tell you, well, that basically telling you all the actions. So pi sk tells you the action name that you're supposed to do in state S if you have k steps left to go. That's what the policy is supposed to tell you. And the T of S, that action S dash, tells you for every other state S dash, what is the probability that when you do this action A in S, you'll get to S dash. And those probabilities add up to 1, obviously. Right? Okay, now, basically this is telling you that, okay, this may have said, well, if you're in state S and you have k steps to go, then you do action A. And then if you do action A in state S, then you will get to S15 with some probability, S75 with some other probability, S95 with some other probability. Now if you are in S15, then the value that you're going to get is the value of the S15 for just k minus 1 steps left. Right? That's the recurrence. Now of course you may not be in S15, you may be in S95, and then the value would be the S95's k minus 1 value. And since there are probabilities for each of these states, you just essentially sum over probability times the value. You will get the expected value you would get from here. You add that to the immediate reward. That must by definition be equal to the value of the policy at state S with k steps to go. You see what I'm saying? That's it. I understood something useful, which is basically you can always compute the value of a policy by this set. Now, they may look pretty, scary. I don't know, may not be scary if you are not particularly worried about equations, but this essentially is a set of linear equations.
It's really similar to this count.
What?
It's very similar.
Yes. We'll get to that for a different reason, but So in fact, this is, I guess if you already know that, you say this is true. But if you go from here, there is a reason why we are doing this. It's completely clear. For the discount one, there are other interesting issues. There is, of course, there's very similar. That the whole thing is similar actually. But anyway, so basically you have a bunch of equations and you solve them, and you get. In fact, you can essentially get, if you know V0, you can get V1. If you know V1, you can get V2, and so on. Okay. In fact, it's not even hard to solve equations. It's these equations where V0 is already computed, so V1 is directly in terms of V0, V2 is directly in terms of V1. These are not equations which basically you really have to matrix inverse either, although you can do it. Okay? So basically all I'm saying is this picture basically tells you that if you are in this state and according to the policy, you can do an action, you're supposed to do an action pi of sk, which is let's say action A15, and that would have given you this state with 0.7, this state with 0.3. Then all I'm going to do is take the reward of this plus 0.7 times the value with k minus 1 steps of this plus 0.3 times the value k minus 1 steps of this. Since those are already computed, I get to compute this. Right? So I just told you how to compute the value of a policy. So now I can say essentially, there are only, after all, there are only, a power s times t policies. Just do this for every one of them and then see which one seems to dominate everything else. That would basically not be still very good because you're still looking at exponential number of policies, but at least you answered the question of what is the value of a policy. I mean, pardon the pun, because we actually defined the policy in terms of the value function. Okay? So now the next part is, okay. The next part is, if I understand this, which is computing Vk with policy pi, can I somehow directly compute Vk with optimal policy pi star without knowing what pi star is? Cute, right? Until here I have pi sitting and I can ask pi, okay, if I give you s and k, tell me what action is. I want to try this game where I don't know optimal policy yet. But I still want to compute the Vk with respect to optimal policy pi star. Let's just call it V star. V star with k steps to go in terms of V star with k minus 1 steps to go. If I can do that, then somehow I can avoid enumerating other policies. Right? Now, first thing to understand is, do you know optimal value with 0 steps to go? Good. You already are pathway there. You already know V star 0, right? And so if I can somehow tell you how to compute V star k given V star k minus 1, then you can bootstrap your way up. V star 0 to V star 1, V star 1 to V star 2, and so on. Okay, that's basically it. Okay, so here, I'm in state S. I'm about to compute, unfortunately I changed the notation here. I'm about to compute t plus 1 time steps left to go, value function. And I already know t time steps left to go, optimal value function. T time steps left to go, optimal value function. Okay, now from this state, it turns out I know what actions I can do. This is part of knowing the MDP. So for example, in the grid world, you can only go either up or down or left or right. That's it. Those are the actions you get to do. So suppose in your little world, you only have A1 and A2, just conceptually. Okay, suppose you do A1, you get to S1 with 0.7 probability, S4 with 0.3 probability. If you do A2, you get to S2 with 0.4, S3 with 0.6. So, if you remember, some policies would be picking A1, some policies will be picking A2, because there are only 2 actions. One of them has to be picked by every policy. The question is, which action would the optimal policy pick? Optimal policy will pick the action which will give the higher expected backed up value. Right? Otherwise, why would it be optimal? In fact, there is a beautiful point there, which is optimal substructure principle. If you have an optimal solution for going from here to Los Angeles, optimal path from going to Los Angeles, and Redding falls on that path. Redding is a city, I think in California, which falls on the optimal path, according to me, from going from here to Los Angeles. And you're trying to find the optimal path for Redding. The part of the bigger plan that takes you to Redding is the optimal plan for going to Redding. That's the optimal substructure principle. It's mostly true in most of your real life, and in fact, it is true for any Markovian system. That's why Markov gets to name everything. Okay. For any Markovian system, it turns out optimal substructure holds. Okay. And so, essentially, if I know, since I already would have known Vt by the time I come here, I would know all the numbers here. 0.7 times this number plus 0.3 times this number. That's a real number. 0.4 times this number, 0.6 times this number. That's another real number. Takes the max of those two. That would be what I would add to the reward of S to get the value function of S, k steps. Okay? So, if I were to do the orange action, this is the backed up value. If I were to do the yellow action, this is the backed up value. I can take the max of these two, because optimal policy would pick the max of these two, add the reward of S, then I will get Vt plus 1S. Done. Just told you how to compute the optimal value function. Okay? This is it, optimal value function. So basically, the value iteration, the celebrated value iteration algorithm that you keep hearing if you ever touch MDPs is this algorithm. V0S equal to R of S, which is the reward function. And Vk of S is R of S plus max over all the actions you can do from S, Ts Ks dash times Vk minus 1 S dash. Okay? And this sum. The only difference between this equation, keep looking at this equation, okay? Just look at this equation and this equation. What's the difference? Instead of having pi sk, I just consider all actions, and here you had a summation, there too you had a summation, but you had a max over it. Because of the max, it's not any longer a simple set of linear equations. But you can still solve it, because at every stage you compute the values returned by each of the actions and take the max one. Notice that when you are computing the optimal value, you don't really care about which action you picked where. All that mattered is the max action, what would it have sent back? That gets added to the reward. And once I have the Vk reward, Vk value function, I can compute the Vk plus 1 value function. And when I have basically, if I have, 10 horizon, if I'm trying to solve the MDP for 10 horizon, just a second please. when you're going to solve a 10 horizon value function, you compute 10 value functions for each horizon. And then done. Okay. The only question is, when you're done, you have the optimal value function, but where is the policy?
You have to keep track of it.
You can, no, you don't need, yeah, you can keep track of it, or you can recompute it. Once I give you the value function, you can compute the policy. Because what would you do? If you are in state S and you have k steps to go, then you compute essentially this number for each of the actions and pick the one with the maximum. Because you know the Vk minus 1. You understand what I'm saying? Okay, so you can either keep track of it, or you can always invert optimal value function into an optimal policy. This is a beautiful point. In fact, in the case of infinite horizon, there's only one value function, there's only one policy, they're both stationary, and they're connected like this, in the same. It's just that k disappears. Okay, so that's your value iteration. You should be able to now do finite horizon value function. You can play this when you go home. That's V0. You would know the values of the reward function, value function, because you know the rewards for S1, S2, S4. And then for computing V1, you essentially, for each state, you consider all the actions, take the max value, that expected value that each of these actions will give you, take the max over it, add that to the reward of the state, you get the value for this, and then once you do that, you do the V2, then you do that, you do V3. And this is basically a dynamic programming formulation, because you're starting at V0, you're computing V1 in terms of V0, V2 in terms of V1. Okay, you understood this. When we come back next time, we just say infinite horizon is simpler, essentially, because essentially all VKs are the same. And so you keep doing this until the value function doesn't change. Then you got a converged value function, and that will be the optimal value function. The only issue is math. You know, who told you that you would converge just because you keep doing some random operation? That's, you know, the interesting properties of L1 operator.